I can tell you right now, if you understand the popular card games that are being played right now, this is a walk in the park. I only play one game. I understand the basics of the others, and I was able to pick up this deck like that. So much, I'll be giving you a breakdown on how everything is being used. All I had to do was look at the tutorial one time, and immediately I pretty much knew exactly how the game ran. It is that simple, which I really like about it. And it's so simple, I'm gonna break down what you need to know in this video. Now, the dudes at Enlightened Shadows sent me 3 different posters that I want to show you, big dogs. Not gonna cap, the art on this is pretty cool. It even has the Kickstarter launching on Black Friday. That's soon. And this one is the blue deck from the faction of the children. And the cool thing about this deck is that it's based off of constructs, which is fairly unique to just the children. I think this right here might be the legendary cards that you'll get. I don't have them just yet, but I don't know, man. Maybe I gotta explain what all of this means, and then you'll kind of understand. You know, you can make your opinion if they're good or not. All right, so my first thoughts on In Light of Shadows, the cards. Wow. These cards are really, really big. Like, they're bigger than your average TCG. They're bigger than the bigger TCGs. They are some pretty big cards. The artwork is, you know, I think it could be a little bit bigger, but it's there, it's very viewable, and the game mat is just as big. So this is a tabletop game, and to my understanding, it also will be a game that you can play in an app. One of the best things about this particular game is that the cards that you collect in the TCG have some value when you play the game online, which I think is pretty cool, and some of the other card games can learn from. But these are the children faction cards, and these cards right here are the Grove Conclave. Now, an interesting fact about this particular card game is that you can't play a children Grove Conclave deck. Whatever faction you pick, you're locked into. So there are some cards that are generic for every single, you know, particular deck, but when it comes to picking a particular type, you can only play one of them. Also, a thing that I actually like here is that these decks are 40 cards, no less, no more. And the limit here is that you can only have 2 per any card inside of your deck. There are some other cards called legendaries that you can only have 1 copy of. I think that that's pretty cool from a game balancing perspective. As you already know, I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and we can have 3 copies in a 40 card deck, and that changes the math on a lot of things. If this was the card game that I play, it would make things a lot less consistent, but how this game plays actually fits the restrictions on hand. I'm gonna go ahead and put the children to the side, and we're gonna use the Grove Conclave so I can explain things. With this, there's 3 different types of cards. There's your battalion, then there are your Sonic cards, and then there are your garrison cards. Now, if you're coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, I want you to think of your battalion cards like your monsters, your garrison cards like your spells, continuous spells to be exact, and your psionic cards as your traps. And I do want to point out on the game mat, there is a deck zone and a construct deck, and then there's also a graveyard right here. It literally says graveyard, which I think is cool. And here's how it works. You can't just summon cards and play cards at will. And the top left corner of the card is pretty much the resources you have to give up in order to play. They're called focus. And what separates this from your other card games like Magic and Pokemon or Lorcana is that your resource meter is like a once per turn thing. You can discard a card from your hand to be able to get 2 focus. So I like using dice for this because, you know, you can obviously lose track. Or there are cards that allow you to be able to use the card effect to gain a focus. So if I discarded a card and use this card, I could get 3 focus on one given turn, meaning that I can summon this card to my side of the field, as well as summon this card to my side of the field for the turn. Now, the big trick about this is that if you don't use your focus that turn, you lose it. Every single turn, your focus goes down to 0. And hypothetically, if I use these 4 cards in my hand magically, my hand will replenish back to 5. Your hand replenishes back to 5 every single turn, which is cool. Now, you're probably wondering how exactly do you win the game, and I probably should have explained that first. Well, both players start off with 7 points. And at any given time, you can use your battalion monsters to be able to attack your opponent directly. It doesn't matter if your opponent has battalion monsters themselves, it's actually up to them to use their battalion monsters to defend themselves or take damage. Now, it doesn't matter how strong your battalion is, no matter what happens, they will always just take 1 damage per direct attack. So in this particular example, both of my battalions are 2. That's not determined to use how much damage my opponent takes. That's actually used to determine if they battle each other. Like if my opponent had this battalion on the field and I use my Shield Maiden to attack it. What we would do here is we would compare the stats for one another. My Shield Maiden has 2, your Forest Ranger has 1, so that means that your Forest Ranger is dust. But another cool thing is that my Shield Maiden would take damage equal to this guy's attack too. So my Shield Maiden would go down to 1. Now, another thing to note is that anytime that you use these cards, whether attacking or using their effects, you switch them to the side. This is called blocking inside of this game. It's called resting in Magic the Gathering. And basically what it means is that these cards are spent. I can't attack with a battalion that's being blocked, and I also can't defend myself when my opponent uses their battalion to attack me with a blocked battalion. You see, this is like ridiculously simple. It has aspects of Magic, Lorcana, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, all into one, which is the reason why I only needed to watch the video once to understand everything there is to know. Well, except for a couple of things. So your battalions have effects, and some of them are pretty straightforward. Like Beast Tamer says, draw a card every time Beast Tamer destroys an opponent's battalion. That's straightforward. But some of them have just one word of text, like taunt. Well, that's pretty simple. Unlike some other card games we know, a lot of the verbiage is simplified with just one word. For example, Elk Rider has taunt, and basically what this means is that before my opponent can attack any of my other guys on the field, that's a garrison card, it doesn't go there, they have to attack the battalion with taunt first. Fall means that if this guy goes to the graveyard, then it gets to activate its effect. There's guys with the ability charge. I probably didn't tell you that anytime you place a monster or a battalion in your battalion zone, they can't attack the turn they're summoned. They all have summoning sickness, but charge ignores that. And then there are some other mechanics that aren't in this particular deck that are interesting to explore. Now, I've pretty much explained a lot about the battalion. Let's talk about the garrison. I want you guys to think of the garrison as continuous spells and trap cards. The only difference is that when you play them, they come in blocked already. It's like a future investment type thing. And the reason why I keep on saying continuous spell and trap card is that your garrison cards stay on the field until you decide to remove them. So that means every single time you untap them, you can then use their effects and then keep going about your day. And your psionic cards are a little bit different. You use them, you use their effects, they go to the graveyard. That's pretty much all there is. To give you a small breakdown on how this works, let me go ahead and show you a really quick test hand since I don't got nobody to play with. If you're going first, you start off with 4 cards in hand. If you're going second, you start off with 5 cards in your hand. And in your opening turn, once per duel, you can mulligan cards back into your deck to draw separate cards. I am going to send 2 back. Actually, let's just make it 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and get 3 new cards, which, that's interesting. I have nothing but battalion cards, so my turn would start off by gaining focus. What I would do here is that I would discard the veteran hero. That's 2 focus. I would then summon the clan warrior, which doesn't require any focus. And then I'd spend that 2 focus to actually put a garrison. I noticed I had a garrison, so we would start off Axe Thunder blocked. I would keep this card in my hand, and then I would draw until I have 5 cards in my hand, which puts me at 4. For what I read about this particular strategy, it's built on being able to summon as many battalion monsters as possible as fast as possible. And you actually get rewarded for being able to do that. I think that this is the stronger of the 2 strategies. My opponent would then set up for their turn, but since I went first, I have the bigger advantage. Of course, I start off with 0 garrison here, but since I can just untap my cards and then, do how I gotta do, I would discard 2 cards to be able to gain 4 focus here. Then I'd be able to bring out my Quartermaster by using 2, as well as garrison my Axe Thunder. Hypothetically, depending on the situation, I'd send my clan warrior out for an attack. But more importantly, I would have axe throwers to be able to deal 5 damage to my opponent's battalions, which means I can knock out any of their guys. I'd have a Quartermaster that allows me to be able to draw a card when he's getting rid of, so that's pretty good. I'm definitely going to be using him to protect me because he gets me stuff when he's actually gotten rid of. And I'd be able to get 4 new cards to be able to start the turn. I'm telling you guys, if I actually had somebody to cook with here, they would probably be getting, they definitely be getting cooked. And that's all that I have for In Light of Shadows. It's an interesting card game with so much about it. I think that if you're looking for another card game, then this may be able to scratch your itch. If anything, just go ahead and check out their Kickstarter page that's going on right now. Of course, Big Dog, I hope you're having an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next video.